Didn't you win a couple of prestigious awards from Sam Adams, and that's why you decided to open a brewery, right?
No, but that'd be a great story.
No? Oh, sure, sorry.
We get our research from Wikipedia.
Right, really? I didn't even know we had a Wikipedia page. So we got our first award year one when we opened the brewery. Rate Beer named us Best New Brewery in Wisconsin. And that's really what kind of launched us and got us off the ground. Because, when you start a brewery, we were actually talking about it before the show, hardest part is getting out there and convincing people that it's good liquid.
Cheers.
You've stumbled on into the Tap Takeover Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Tap Takeover Podcast. We're back in the studio here, Solid Nonfield Studios, and we're about to go into our latest episode with Three Sheeps. Sat down with Grant Pauly, had a great time.
Yeah, it's really fun to be able to take a little trip up to Sheboygan, Wisconsin, sit down at what was a wonderful little brewery. Really get into some of the beers that Grant brews. He had some great stuff on tap for us, but unfortunately it was right before the anniversary party, so he didn't have some of the really fun beers that we wanted to try. So we decided to bust out our own. How about that? Jim, tell us about some of these beers.
Yeah, really excited for this. These are been aging in Jesus' basement for a while. He's our number one Three Sheeps fan here. So he's got some old school Uber Joe here. What year is this, Jesus?
That's 2016.
All right, 2016.
So all the other ones that I had aging here are from 2016 when they bottled those versions.
But then we also have the fresh one from the most recent anniversary party. So we've got the barrel-aged Uber Joe from 2018.
That's right. So it's the Imperial Black Wheat Coffee Ale. Of course, you got to have adjuncts, right? Cocoa nibs, coffee vanilla, and maplewood staves.
And that was the 2016.
Yep.
So I'm sure that they've changed up the recipe a little bit as they've kind of done a whole rebranding effort. But Andy, which one are you looking forward to here?
Well, I'm looking forward to some of the other ones we have to try, too. We also have the 2016 version of Paid Time Off and the 2018 version of Paid Time Off as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they changed recipes and see how it came out.
I'll tell you, these 2016s, these are some sexy, sexy bottles. I mean, you're talking jet black with gold trim. I mean, they put some effort into the branding on these guys.
Yeah, and then the Midnight Bourbon Barrel Ale of Imperial Black Wheat Ale. Just another treat. Actually, when I sent Grant the picture of this, he forgot about this beer. So I told him that we had them all, and so I'm looking forward to trying these. I was waiting for this occasion. I think we just get started here.
Let's pop it.
Yeah, it's really cool when you can make the brewer jealous. Starting off with the 2016 version here. This is when it was still an Imperial Wheat. You can tell it's aged a bit. It's a higher ABV, but a lot of the adjuncts have fallen off. I don't want to say it's flat, but it's not popping at me at all. It's still pretty good, but I think it would have been better, a little bit fresher.
I think the chocolate's definitely still there. All of the coffee's fallen off.
Yeah, there's no more coffee left at all. There's not much vanilla, I think, left. The Maplewood staves still lend to the mouthfeel of the beer. It's got that going for it, but the adjuncts have fallen off. It's still a very good beer, though.
It's like what we've said. It's like some of these are an experiment, and this one should not have been aged this long, but...
Well, that's why you buy multiple bottles, right?
Yeah.
So but
I think it's specifically the style, right? I mean, the style is just different. It says Uber Joe, but it's not really the same, right? Because the new one is what style? Is stout?
Well, it's gone from a black wheat ale to an imperial stout. So, yeah, they've beefed it up a little bit. Yeah, Andy, what do you think about the new one compared to the old one here?
The new one's coming off great. I mean, this is something I wish I could have gotten a couple bottles of instead of just one.
Oh, boy.
And the coffee's phenomenal on it. The barrel aging is great.
And we should say this is a couple weeks, right? Yeah. A couple weeks old.
A couple weeks. What was it?
It's
maybe 2-3 weeks ago
yeah.
when we're recording now.
Yeah, the nose is great. The coffee is just, it's like we always say, it's just subtle, but it's there, you know?
Oh, it's a fantastic
fantastic
coffee edition on this.
Yeah, they used a great coffee.
Yeah, it's both in the bouquet and on the palate. It's not bitter at all, and it doesn't overwhelm the beer. You still get a lot of the stout flavor coming through. It's accentuated by the barrel aging. This is definitely one you got to drink fresh because you want to experience this coffee.
Perfect acidity on the coffee compared to the stout. And Andy, you and I, we don't drink coffee. We drink our coffee and our beer.
Correct.
And this is why we do it, because this is a really good coffee stout.
It's a great beer.
What do you guys think the barrel has done to this? Anything?
Well, I was about to say that. I asked you guys that because I don't think the barrel, when I taste barrel-aged beers, I mean, it's so intense. and you can really taste that, the flavor of the barrel in it. But to me, the coffee is still there, and the base stout is the star of this,
I can actually taste more of the barrel in the 2016 than I can in the 2018.
Well, I think the coffee, so in your face, it's probably overwhelming some of those barrel notes on your palate.
It is definitely more subtle. I think that's intentional, though, where this is definitely a coffee beer first, and then barrel aging is that one of the subtle undercurrents. It's by no means overwhelming.
Well, it'll be interesting when we take a break to compare the barrel aging on the Uber Joe to the barrel aging on the paid time off and the 2018 and see, if that one's even a little more pronounced. But I think without further ado, let's let Grant tell us about these beers himself. Let's get right into the episode.
Many brewers have grown to love beer, but few have the love of beer in their blood. That could be said about Grant Pauly. He's had a lifetime of great brewery stories that stem from his great-grandparents who purchased the brewery and took it nationwide. Those stories were passed on to his father, who walked the floors of that brewery. Those seeds brought fruit many years later when Grant's hobby became a passion. Today, we are talking to Grant Pauly, who is the founder and brewmaster at Sheeps Brewing in Sheboygan. As we record, we are days away from the 6th-year anniversary of this award-winning brewery. A lot of great things have happened in those 6 years. They have moved into a beautiful new facility. They recently went through a rebranding and have grown what is becoming one of our favorite barrel aging programs. Grant, thank you for taking time in your hectic week to sit down with us.
Oh, thanks for coming up to Sheboygan.
Before we get started, let's put the voices to the names. So I am Jesus.
I'm Jim.
I'm Grant.
This is Andy.
And this is Alex.
So as we start, let's begin how we usually like to, with a little tasting. So Grant, what are you going to start us off with?
So today we're starting off with some Water Slides IPA. This IPA is actually the only recipe that came with me from the old homebrew days, which makes it kind of even more exciting that it is currently our best seller and has been for the last 6 years since we opened up. When we opened, I really wanted to make a very kind of floral citrusy but not overly malty IPA. 6 years ago, Wisconsin still wasn't really into that style. So it was just fun watching people not quite know what to expect from it. And today, by today's standards, it's not the hoppiest IPAs either. It's like kind of middle of the road, and we're kind of getting the opposite. So it's been really fun seeing with this beer just how the trends have changed in Wisconsin and what people are really looking for.
Yeah, there's been a growing evolution of IPAs, especially recently with the advent of the New England IPA, the hazy IPA. For me, this is, I don't want to call it easy drinking, but it is very balanced IPA.
Thank you.
You don't find much anymore.
Yeah, that's something that's really important for any of our year-round beers. They have to pass what we call a 3-pint drinkability test. If you can't have 3 of them in one sitting without being sick of it, or without having one flavor be bigger than another one that you just don't enjoy it through the 3 pints, it just doesn't fit with what we want to do. We have other seasonals and one-offs that those will hit those metrics, higher alcohol, big flavors in one direction, but if you're going to pick up a 6-pack of 3 Sheeps, you're going to enjoy it for a while. At least that's the goal.
It's a very approachable beer. It's great. It has all the complexities that we like in those hoppy beers, but very approachable. It's a great beer.
It's really fun, too, that you brought one from the homebrewing days. Not everybody does. A lot of folks that we interview, they say, we ask them, did any of the beers from your homebrew days kind of make the jump? And they're like, nah, those are beers that I improved on once upon a time. Mm-hmm. This one, has there been any tweaks since the old homebrew days?
About a year ago was the first time we did. We updated a little bit. The hops stayed the same. The malt, we took it from 6.2% to 6.7, dried it out just slightly to allow, alcohol-wise in an IPA, I really do like to hit at least a 6.5% because alcohol is a sweetness. So I think it balances really well with hops. And by hitting that 6.7, it just matched up more with, I think, what people are enjoying these days and allowed us to update a bit. But that's been the only change. Otherwise, it's still been the Columbus, Cascade, and Zythos hops that it's been since day one.
Oh, the old CTZ.
So let's go back to those early homebrew days. What got you started?
Yeah, I started homebrewing pretty much right when I turned 21. My wife, girlfriend at the time, bought me a homebrew kit kind of as a lark. I was just getting into craft beer, enjoying it, but not overly geeky by any means as far as I am today. Made a brown ale. Thankfully, it wasn't terrible, and it convinced me to make another one and just kind of kept going along that front. Went from the basic starter kits to quickly getting into all grain, quickly getting obsessed. Towards the end, before the brewery was even an idea, a quarter of our basement was my brewing laboratory. I loved kind of 2 different things with homebrewing. One was just anytime I got to make something new, throwing in an odd ingredient, I loved experimenting with different flavors. The other thing I love doing is making the same beer over and over again, which on the homebrew scale at 5 gallons it's really difficult. And I realized after a while that my trying to make this beer in particular, water slides, over and over again pretty much was manufacturing a beer. And it kind of started down the path of, well, maybe this would be worth pursuing.
Didn't you win a couple of prestigious awards?
So we got our first award year one when we opened the brewery. Rapier named us best new brewery in Wisconsin. And that's really what kind of launched us and got us off the ground. Because when you start a brewery, we were actually talking about it before the show, hardest part is getting out there and convincing people that it's good liquid, because there's a lot of options. Having that award helped us to not have to sample to every account. It gave us a little more credibility. Once we got that, it just really took off.
So tell us about the first space.
Yeah, so when I was pouring concrete for a family business, and I was third generation in that biz, and realized that, I didn't like concrete, which was a good revelation. Started to look at what we could do. I knew I wanted to get into beer. And about the same time, unfortunately for the previous owner, a brew pub in our town went out of business. So I got wind that the new owners of the building really just wanted to run the bar, and they were going to sell the equipment out of state. Contacted them that afternoon, went in, checked out the property. That evening, we had a handshake agreement for us to buy the stainless and all the equipment and just rent space. So then we kind of got to go back and go through all logistical things, but it was a pretty unbelievably quick arrangement that just got us off the road.
You're taking over a brew pub that failed. Is there any trepidation that say, well, maybe Sheboygan's not ready for packaging brewery yet?
My wife lovingly calls me optimistically ignorant, to the point where, no, there wasn't. I knew looking at beer in Wisconsin, it was growing at a great pace at that point. I just saw so much opportunity. And the beer that we were trying to make was different than what had been at that spot. And I knew I wanted to go packaging instead of brew pub. So really, they were just our first customer. But that first batch of beer went all over, really Sheboygan County down through Milwaukee. I just had faith that it would work.
So how was that first setup? Because you said there was some confusion. It wasn't your brew pub, right? It was you were
right. Yeah,
there
was definitely a lot of confusion from it. So the building was kind of a co-op. It's the best way to think about it. We ran the brewing side and just rented space in the building. So we were a separate company. Bar were the landlords. They had the building as well. And then the food in the bar was a third company. So it made it even more confusing. But it worked really well because we all just got to focus on what we were passionate about and loved. And after brewing and packaging for 12 hours, at that point, the idea of going and tending bar for a few hours really wasn't that appealing.
Sure.
So it really it let us just do this. And I think it also allowed us to get off the ground faster because all we were doing was making beer and getting out there and trying to find new partners and accounts to work with to see what people think and kind of keep growing on that front. So I'm really glad we got to do that route first because it kept us singularly focused on making great beer. We didn't get distracted by anything else. It was just all about the kegs.
So did you totally pull out of that space, or
we did? Yep, we are out as of about a year and a half ago. This tap room has been open for 2 years now, and we've been producing here for about 16 months. So we are now just on one property.
Very early on, you decided to work with a distributor. What led you to that decision of self-distributing?
It was a tough one, but I was lucky enough to run into one of the managers of Beechwood, our distributor. They're based out in New Berlin, Wisconsin. They're the largest craft distributor in the state. We just hit it off. This was before we'd even produced a batch of beer. Just how their thought and philosophy on craft beer, where it can be going, how adamant they were that it is going to be dominant in our state, just their respect for it, it just made sense. Again, it let us keep focusing on making the beer. They had, at that point, like 100 sales reps, so we really got to be the guys making it, and then they went out there and championed it for us. So it's been fun watching them grow because they've expanded a lot in the last 6 years, just as we have, and we've kind of gotten to grow up in Wisconsin together in this crazy beer time.
So what were the first beers on your core line then that you distributed?
We had 4. We had Water Slides, our IPA, The Bad Boy, a black wheat, Rebel Kent, our amber ale, and Cirque de Wit, a Belgian wheat. Currently, we still have 2 of those, so the Water Slides and the Rebel Kent.
We always like to ask all of the brewers that come on our program, if you could take over the taps at the Tap Takeover Podcast, which of your beers would you use to kind of tell that story? So I guess would you use any of that core lineup? Where would you kind of start?
Water Slides would definitely be the number one. I think it tells the story of who we are the best because it came from an old t-shirt of mine that friends gave me back when I was working concrete. It had a little guy at a crossroad. One way pointed to fame, fortune, money, and success. The other way pointed to water slides, and the guy didn't know which way to go. So my friends knew that was my struggle. Concrete was safe, secure. You always needed concrete, but the brewery was calling my name. So that's why we had to name our first beer Water Slides. Fortunately, everyone I work with has a similar story. No one grows up wanting to be a brewer. Most of us didn't know that was an option. So we have day traders and carpenters and landscapers and customer service techs. People from all different walks of life, and we're all really motivated not to fail, so we don't have to go back to our previous jobs. So even on those long days that aren't great, which there are, we appreciate what we get to do, and that's make beer. So it just makes them bearable, and it makes it just a really enjoyable work day.
So, and you said water slides is your number one overall. So what percentage of your production is water slides then?
I love it that it's only about 30%. So where a lot of breweries, their flagship can be 50 to 80% of what they
30's a
do.
great number.
It is. Yeah, I think it just means that, for our core lineup, we have a strong core overall. Between this, Rebel Kent, our Pilsner, Fresh Coast, our Juicy Pale Ale, Cashmere Hammer, our Nitro Stout. They are all at one time or another vying for that first, second, third place. And I love it. I wouldn't want it any other way.
So if we have, let's say, 3 more taps on this tap takeover, which others would you throw on there?
I think today it would be our Juicy Pale Ale, Fresh Coast. Back in... Yeah, that's a train outside. Yeah, it's right next to the right. It looks great in the summertime. Back in 20, I want to get my year right, 16. We were out in the market doing a lot of events. All we had on tap were these 9+% beers, and I realized when I look back in the year, the average beer alcohol ABV of new releases was almost over 10%, which is terrible for when you're in Milwaukee doing an event and you have to drive home that night. 'Cause, I always want a beer in my hand,
Not while driving.
and that makes me want to drink it. So, yeah, I realized, something should change, and what's nice is the trends changed as well. People really pulled away from drinking the high ABV stuff exclusively, and we were able to make a great 4.8%, juicy pale ale where all the hops are at the end. It's floral, it's, pungently tropical. So to me, it was an exciting one, not just from the production side, because I love it. I think it's a great drinker. I loved seeing the trends change towards that of, you can have a few without getting into trouble, and it's just a part of what you're about. It doesn't have to be the necessarily focal point of what you're doing.
Was there any discussion, any thought process about going hazy, going full-on New England style with that one?
We're going to be dabbling in that as well, and we actually have some fun stuff coming out this year with a few that are going to be in that true style. But for this beer, I didn't think we needed it. We're able to get a lot of that similar body and kind of creaminess that you associate with a hazy without doing the haze. For a year-round 6-pack, that was important to me. It's really consistent. It has a great shelf life. You'll enjoy it even if you forget it in the basement for a few months. And I think you just can't do that necessarily with a hazy. Those should be drank right away. So it just didn't fit with that.
I tend to agree with you. It kind of takes me back to some of the discussion we had with Anello at Central Waters, and how he was very, at that point, against the hazy IPA. He's since started brewing his own hazy IPA, but that's a different story. But he was just talking about how you can get those big flavors, the big flavors of the New England style, the juicy flavors, without going full-on haze. And I think you guys nailed it with this beer.
Thanks.
It's got all those amazing citrus and tropical kind of flavors, but it doesn't need to be hazy. And
Right.
I think you nailed it too. The mouthfeel is really good on it. It's got that big mouthfeel without going full-on mud.
Yeah,
like Anello said.
and it's something that we worked a lot on, because it really is a whole different way of brewing. I first heard about this hazy IPA and pale ale trend. Yeah, I almost put in the category of glitter beers, kind of pretty gimmicky. But I went out east and just fell in love with them because they were so well made, and it really enhanced the flavor. And once you start looking at the chemistry of how to create something like that, it's very different than a traditional IPA or pale ale even. So yeah, it's a style that's here because it is legit, and it's very difficult to do properly. So yeah, we love them. We love that mouthfeel. I'm trying to do it, get that character out of a 4.8% beer.
And there is that big challenge of freshness too, especially for a packaging brewery such as yourself that's working through distribution. You don't always necessarily know how your beer is being treated. Though you got a great partner,
Right.
It still may take some time. So do you start to really craft your recipes around making sure that your end customer is going to get something that's going to be a quality beer?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I mean, we, as far as the talk of freshness, we knew when we came out with a beer called Fresh Coast, we were setting ourselves up for pretty high expectations of that shelf life. And we work hard with our distributor every week just to, know our inventories, know when there were inventories. And our goal is to, from production to out of our door, at max 10 days, ideally 7 days. And we want it off their shelves in another 7 to 10 days. So that it's getting out to anywhere in Wisconsin in particular, within 14 to 20 days. And I think at that point, especially for a liquor store, they have 4 6-packs in to sell from a case. They should be able to do that in a couple weeks, and that's just going to, get that best product to the consumer right away. We also work hard then on our packaging side to make sure that, we have very low oxygen levels. We have a brand new to us filler. It's a German-made guy that has just only helped our shelf life from our old brewery where we had much smaller.
Also more jury-rigged, as I've heard, rigging together of things that you found around the place.
We definitely made it work, yes. But now with the new place, we knew we were able to set ourselves up well for the right equipment and to set, for long-term shipping and yeah, it's been nice to be able to put this all together.
So we got 2 more taps
Two
to
more.
take over.
All right.
And you can do something that is a little bit tougher to get too.
Oh yeah, we're gonna go big for the next one. I'm gonna throw on our cuvee. Let's go 2017. A cuvee is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Cuvee it's when you blend different beers together. And it's just an old winemaking tradition that the idea of, not just using ingredients to blend and make a beer, but be able to take our beers that we've had. And for me, the goal is I want to take what we've done in the previous year and this have kind of be the first beer coming out the following year as an homage to everything that we did that previous year. And it's just a really fun process. We go through all of our barrels, we taste them, which is the worst part of the job. And and we just see what works and what direction we want to head. So 2017, I really wanted to show people that you can blend not only just beer, but barrels. So it was a combination of red wine and bourbon barrels in different formats. We had Imperial Black Saison in there. We had some black wheat, Imperial Stouts. I think that was it. It was 4 different base beers with 2 different types of bourbon barrels and red wine barrels. It was just really enjoyable watching people's expression as they were tasting this beer because you could get all of the flavors out of it. And that's part of what we really love doing is kind of pushing boundaries on what people think should be, beer should be. And this was just one that was a great case for it. When we took it out to events and let people try it, I mean, it made them think.
So what was the difference between 2017 and I guess 2018?
2018 was all about using second use barrels. So they had all been used in a previous batch of something. So you didn't have as much of that bourbon character coming through, but you got a lot more of the wood undertones. With that, then, we used several different beers as well of ours. We used Veneration, which is the Belgian quad with figs and molasses. I know of a couple different Imperial Stouts. First one was a lot sweeter because of red wine and the Imperial Saison, but then the second one was just much drier, and you got a lot of those undercurrent flavor.
Well, I want to go back to this space. What made this leap to this space? I mean, it's a lot bigger. It's very impressive. Was there any hesitation of going this big?
Well, of course. I mean, it definitely took the bank loans up just a small amount.
A wee bit.
Oh, no, we have put together such an incredible group of people that we get to work with, from everything, from the sales side to production to, now we have just awesome taproom group. I just had nothing but faith that we'd be able to pull this off. Getting into the new brewery, we'd maxed out our production at the old brewery for about 2 years in a row. So we had a lot of pent-up demand that I knew we could keep growing, that we'd be able to utilize the brewery side to some degree right off the bat. But then the taproom has really surprised us on just how popular it's been. We have 22 of our beers on tap, always rotating through different styles. What we've become is, our goal is to not compete with the bars in town that support us because they've just been our partners forever. So, we close at 10, usually open at 4. We only have our beer, and we carry in any restaurant's welcome to deliver to our place. We do a lot of out-of-town business. People coming from Door County, Madison, Milwaukee. It's just been really nice to have people come to our place and then go to other bars in town and experience that. And a lot of corporate events, businesses host their parties here and things like that. So it's been a nice way for us to communicate directly with our customer base.
You've also been spreading your pilot batches to the community as well.
Yes.
Right? So what have been the winners so far on the pilot system?
Oh man, I've had some fun on that system. So with our big brewery, we put in a new 3-vessel 30 barrel. One of the big toys we got to get was a 2-barrel pilot system. So on that, we're usually brewing something once a week on there, and kind of all over the board. Right now, we have a Pennsylvania Swanky on. It's an early 1800s beer that was just consumed in western Pennsylvania. It was English mild dark with licorice flavor. So my gut says that it was like 3% originally. Yeah, that's what they drank in the morning to kind of nurse the hangover while they were working the fields. So we've been playing around with that a little bit. We've done a lot of hoppy experiments on there, and that's been fun. Most of our hazy brews that are coming out this year have all started there. It really kind of lets us hone in, figure out our water profiles. The small system mirrors our larger system, so it's really easy to scale up then accurately and consistently. Yeah, I'd say the hoppy ones are the most fun at this point to brew on that guy.
So what's been your growth of volume from the old place to this new one?
Last year was about 50%. And this year we're trending up. Right now we're up about 55% over last year.
Oh, that's big growth.
So we've been very fortunate thus far.
Is that mostly due to the tap room?
Oh, that's production.
That's just straight. Okay.
Yeah. Wisconsin has been going really well for us. Others, Illinois has as well. The Chicago Tribune named Cashmere Hammer the beer of the month in December, and that just had a renewed interest in the entire city for us. So that has carried over for the last several months, and yeah, I think with the new packaging and branding, it's just resonating well with people.
So what was the choice to rebrand?
So about a year ago exactly, we put out new packaging for everything, from logo all the way through label, 6-packs. It all started 2 years ago when we had our grand opening here And I was looking over kind of everything that we had done. The place was packed. It was awesome. And realizing like the brand that we were and who we were just wasn't who we kind of matured into.
So new place, new
place,
look.
new everything. And what really cinched it for me is I went to the Great Taste, as we always do, and was talking to just a gentleman who came up to our booth and said, Grant, I love your beer. If anyone ever has it, I always get it. Someone gives me one, I know it's going to be great. When I'm at the store, I never think to buy a 6-pack. Maybe you should do something about that.
Wow.
And it just resonated with me of, where our beer was to today. It has grown. It has matured. I think it has improved. And with so many packages on the shelf, and they're, the consumer will usually look at a 6-pack for about 2 seconds when they're scanning. You really need to tell your story in that 2 seconds. So we really went with a focus of what the beer was about. Our labels are all about what's either in the beer from a ingredient basis or a style basis. If you look at the Water Pack 6-pack, you're going to see scratchings on there. And that's actually the formulas I used to make the Water Slides IPA originally 7 years ago, from a hop bitterness to gravity to malt balance. So we really wanted to kind of just get back to why we do what we do. It really centered in on our slogan, which made sense of brewing with heart and science. We're passionate about the beer.
So throwing it back all the way, where did the name Three Sheeps come from?
Kind of mentioned, I came from concrete, which I ran our family precast plant during the recession, during a lot of times where it was just tough for all infrastructure and construction companies, where at that point your competitors hated you, your vendors hated you, your employees hated you, and your customers hated you because no one was happy. And whoever shouted the most won the argument. And when I got out of that industry, I knew I wanted to be as far away from that type of person as I could. So I thought naming ourselves after a fluffy, grammatically incorrect animal was a really good way to not take life seriously. So as we say, we're serious about the beer, but really nothing else. Life's too short, and you just got to enjoy it.
So why 3?
It's an homage to Three Sheets to the Wind as well.
Okay.
So, we're trying to play off a couple of different things there. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll tell you what, I really enjoy the new rebranding, but I do sometimes miss seeing those Three Sheeps handles, where there's literally 3 sheeps climbing over each other. And those were fun.
I know. We've won and been recognized in more different awards for those. They're in a magazine flying around on American Airlines right now as part of like a tap handle feature little piece. It's amazing the legs those things had. But we really, if we wanted to go with the new brand, we had to go all the way. So coming up with this one where now it's the 3, the style on there, and you're drinking a Three Sheeps beer. It stands out. Yeah, that was definitely a tough one to part with. Those were special to all of us.
I thought it was a little weird because you were only around for 4 years, and to rebrand. As I was starting to hear about you guys, it was this look, and then the rebranding. But it's interesting to find out the reasons why,
Yeah.
So we're going to take a little break right now, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the beer, and the reason why we're here is the 6th anniversary coming up. So we'll find out more about that, more about what you have going on in the rest of 2018. So we'll be right back.
All right, hold up. We've got another little tasting for you guys. Andy, what are we bringing back for this one?
So this is the 2016 Midnight Bourbon Barrel Ale. I know they don't make this beer anymore. Part of their Nimble Lips Noble Tongue series. I think Grant actually forgot about this one, right?
Yeah, he didn't know that this actually existed somewhere in the world, so that's pretty cool. Still had it for a couple years, and it's holding up, like you said.
So
really good.
my first take on it is it held up perfectly. I think it's still a very good beer.
Oh, so Grant, this tasting's for you. I agree. This has held up really well, better than the 2016 Uber Joe. Jim, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, so this is a little different than we've been tasting before, even though it's another imperial wheat. This was brewed with Belgian yeast, so we are getting a little bit of those esters and phenols and a little banana and clove in there. But I think it has held up well over the couple of years that it's been aging.
I agree. I mean, the banana and clove flavoring intermingles well with the Midnight Black wheat.
Yeah, it's like a chocolate banana kind of thing going on here, and it's really, really nice. The chocolate is held on very nice. Are you guys getting anything from the barrel? Because we had talked about how the Uber Joe did not have a lot of barrel stuff going on. What about this one?
I don't think so. I mean, the reason I got this whole collection, actually, we're tasting like 4 of them, but there was another 4 that did not make the aging process because I drank them. There's a lot of stuff going on, even with the name Imperial Black Wheat Ale. It's so weird, so unique. I guess I'm getting a lot of sweetness. I don't get any of the barrel, honestly, personally. But I just think it's a sweet beer. Tastes really good, smooth. To me, the barrel's not there anymore.
Yeah, as Alex likes to say, the barrel is speaking to me. It's gone quiet on this. I mean, it is very, very quiet. I want to just say subtle.
But what's interesting is that the barrel has gone quiet, but it's allowed some of the other flavors to kind of take center stage. So some of those other flavors are speaking that wouldn't necessarily be speaking from a 2-year-old barrel-aged beer. But on this one, they kind of are. I agree that the Belgian kind of aspect of this is coming out in full force. This is a really nice 2-year-old beer.
I guess talking about how we, age beers, I think we got this one perfect. I would not age it anymore.
Well, I'm going to say, I can't wait for the paid time off that's coming up to end the episode. And Grant, maybe you should pull up the recipe for this one again, because I think this is a winner in all of our books, even 2 years out.
Yeah, I would love to see this one again.
All right. So I think we should continue the interview. All right, and we are back. Grant, you want to take us to the next beer here?
Sure. The next one we're trying is Cashmere Hammer, our Nitro Stout. This beer entered our core lineup very early on. It was our 5th beer that we had ever had in a 6-pack, and became obsessed with nitrogen, like I think a lot of people. And I think a lot of breweries will take one of their regular stouts and put it on nitrogen. That nitrogen bubble, it's so fine, and it just creates such a creamy mouthfeel that I knew we could pack. You can pack a lot more flavor in a nitro beer than you can a regular one. So by designing this around the nitrogen bubble as our first ingredient, we were able to pack all sorts of flavor in there. There's more rye in there than a traditional beer, a lot of caramel and roasty notes that when this beer is flat, it's actually not great because it's so strong. But once you round it out with the nitrogen, it just becomes this creamy chocolate milkshake that has become one of our best sellers now. And we bottle as well at this point.
So we were talking earlier about barrel aging. So
Yes.
you want to tell us a little bit about your program here? It's becoming one of our favorites.
Oh, thank you. Yes, with our old space, we didn't have a whole lot of room. Yes, we were really just dabbling. We did a lot of different barrels, a lot of different styles, and really tried to find out what we thought we were good at and what we really enjoyed doing. With the new space, we now have about 15,000 square feet that we can dedicate to just barrels. So it gives us a lot of ability to age a lot of different things, and also put out 4-packs, which we've switched over 5 of our specialty beers to, so that you can have a 10% beer at 12 ounces, enjoy it on a Tuesday, and not regret it the next day. Where for me, having a 22-ounce bomb of anything made me either want to wait to share with friends or not enjoy the next day because they get too much. So it just with the trends of people drinking more of these on a regular basis, it just made sense for us to switch this way, and because now we can age so much more at one time. It allowed us to keep our price in line so that we can have a nicely priced, kind of high-quality barrel-aged beer.
Is the Wolf one of those?
It is. The Wolf is one of those.
That was one of our favorites. And
Cool. Thank you.
We were trying to get it all last year.
Oh, nice.
Tell us about that one and tell us when it's coming back.
Yeah, so the Wolf, all of our 4-packs from last year were repeats except for the Wolf. So we weren't really sure what to expect. And man, that, thanks to people like you, it just went quickly and hit hard. It is the most complicated malt bill of any of our beers. Where a typical stout for us will have 6 to 8 different types of malt, the Wolf is made up of 14 different ingredients. Just because you need to have so many different flavors for a beer that big, so one doesn't get too large. It took us a while to land on that recipe, and we've always been doing these adjunct stouts, the Imperial Stout, like the Uber Joes and the paid time offs, but we had never done just a traditional Imperial Stout and bourbon barrel, so we knew it had to be special, and thankfully people seem to be enjoying the one we did.
And actually, I want to go back to what you said in the first part about branding and how something stood out. It was just that sweet spot with the packaging of that one, the name. Everything was perfect. It just made you want to grab it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was just a really good, and it tasted amazing. So
thanks.
Perfect.
Thanks. Yeah, we have a really good artist that he can take our style, which I like the most. We take what we do inside the beer and kind of make it come to life on the packaging.
So please tell us and all your listeners that it'll be coming back.
June.
Awesome.
Yes,
All right.
we'll have it back in June. It's sitting in barrels now. Just went through a sampling of them all a few weeks ago. They're tasting great, and I'm very excited for this year's Wolf.
Will you be increasing production?
We are.
Okay.
Yes, there will be more. About yes, so about 30% more, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it'll get it to everywhere, and we'll do a little better job with the list to make sure that each account who wants it will be able to get some.
So if you're hoarding any in your basement, you can drink it.
You're exactly. Feel free.
All right, so we were talking about cellar aging, and you've got some really fun cellar aging projects that, once this airs, the 6th anniversary will have been and gone. But for our listeners, what will they have missed? What are going to be some of those fun beers on tap?
So the 6th anniversary, for us, it's really just a great day to celebrate with everyone who's helped us get to that year. And we wanted to have a few good beers when we did our first big anniversary party last year. So we took 2 of our popular ones, Paid Time Off, which is an Imperial Stout with toasted coconut, cocoa nibs, and walnuts, and then Uber Joe, which is a Imperial Stout with coffee, cocoa nibs, and vanilla aged on Maplewood. And we took those 2 beers and put them in bourbon barrels. We had a great time last year and had far more people here than we were even hoping to expect. So this year we're planning on it, and we're also going over the top with the beers that are going to be available when they're here. So we'll have the 2 anniversary beers. But on top of that, we're going to have, several others. We're doing a blueberry version of Uber Joe. We're doing an Imperial Belgian Golden Ale with raspberries and apricot. We have a peppered bourbon barreled Imperial Stout with ancho chilies for the peppering. Some double barrels, of course, because that's fun. And then we're pulling a lot of great vintage barrels. Some like 2016s, 2015s. We'll have side-by-sides and just try to give people an opportunity to, see how things age next to each other, see how different flavors play, and, just kind of the one-offs to really isolate a flavor.
Are all of those beers going to be taproom only, or are some of those going to be available for distribution?
Right now, they'll be taproom only. I can already tell you the Blueberry Uber Joe is becoming one of my favorites, so we'll be getting that out there and making a larger batch of that at some point. That's why I love our taproom now. When we used to do experimental beers, it was on our pilot system, which was my glorified homebrew setup. So we were making 5 gallons at a crack. But with our pilot system now and the taproom here, we're able to get beers out to the people here, get some real feedback. Our bartenders are great about letting us know the good, the bad, and the ugly, so we can kind of keep tweaking recipes. And then when we do pull one out on a larger scale, we've really honed in and nailed it. So that'll be great for the anniversary party. We love feedback, good and especially bad. We have thick skins, so you won't hurt our feelings. But please let us know. We always want to know.
So going back to your homebrewing days, which you just mentioned, and the beginning of 3 Sheeps, do you have any fun stories from back in the day that you can share with the listeners?
Oh, probably my favorite is my first time playing with smoked malt. I had no idea what I was doing.
Usually the beginning of a good story.
Yeah, put in the beer, just used way too much. This thing was awful, just awful. But I wanted to at least try to drink a pint of it so I could see what else was in there besides the smoked malt. How did I do on the yeast and everything else? So I finished the pint and just kissed my wife goodnight. And she just pulled away and said it just smelled like and tasted like I just smoked a pack of cigarettes. I haven't used smoked malt to this day. I'm still turned off from it. But that is probably the worst. The second best story was at my first bourbon-chipped Imperial Stout experiment. For a New Year's Eve party, I brought them. We cracked open bomber bottles. Everyone had one for the New Year. They were all gushers. The chips, I didn't soak them properly. It was infected. So the hostess, we were at a friend's house, white kitchen. She
of course
she kind of freaked out and put her hand over the top of the bottle. When I said, "Don't take your hand off," she did, and her beer bottle hit the ceiling. It was everywhere. We spent the first 45 minutes of 2009 cleaning kitchen. That was a good project. I will say I threw them in the corner. Then I was so frustrated with that beer. I found them 4 years later. They had soured beautifully. They were delicious. So you never know what you're gonna get. Yeah.
Which kind of leads us to one of the things that we like to talk about is just cellar aging beers and what's in your cellar. What are your general thoughts on how long you should age a beer, or if you can? Mm-hmm. And also, do you have anything in your basement right now?
Well, yes, always in the basement.
Anything good? Sure.
Yeah, so for me, cellaring, for our beers, I always try to put them out when they're good to drink. I think cellaring is something you should do if you are going to buy a few of them, because it's always going to change the beer. And some things cellar better than others. Coffee fades. Vanilla tends to linger a little bit longer. So like an Uber Joe is not going to be Uber Joe 2 years later. Not necessarily a bad thing. And I enjoy the geekery of getting to see how it's going to change and what flavors linger, things like that. But I think you have to go into cellaring with the expectation that you're not going to drink the same beer. Sometimes I'll have a beer and realize I waited too long, and now I have 4 of them that are not going to be as good as they were if I had just had them a year before. In my cellar, what do I have?
That's usually what happens.
Brewery is always a good one. I was fortunate enough to, after taking my coursework at Siebel, go out there and actually brew with them for about 10 days, where I just kind of firsthand experience under Tyler King, the brewmaster at that point, and he just really took me under and kind of taught me everything. So our barrel program is based off of theirs, QC side, things like that. It was an incredible experience. So besides their beer being incredible, they just always have a special place for me. So we usually have several of their beers kind of hanging out, waiting to drink with friends. Central Waters, we're very good buddies, and it's always fun to trade beers with those guys. What else? Allagash is another one of my favorites. Their sours are, I think, just some of the best in the country. They're just so clean, and they've been doing it for so long. I guess those are big ones right now. And Founders. I've always been a big fan of what they offer. So there's usually something other is lurking somewhere in the house. And now really Wisconsin has not really for cellaring, but there's so many of these new guys who are putting out some just good hop beers that I've been really enjoying, just finding some new things that I've never had before and knowing I can trust them, that they're going to be great hoppy beers.
Talked about that one beer going bad and being accidentally soured. Has there ever been any discussion about doing a sour barrel age program?
Yes, actually, for those who are coming to our, who this is past tense now, who came to our anniversary party, you'll see that what had been our sour area in the tap room is no longer here. We had started to dabble in it, never really committed all the efforts and needs for a great sour program. That was going to be this coming year once we got everything else settled. But unfortunately, with how the state codes are written, it was deemed that we could not do any production over here without putting up full walls and having isolation from the tap room. Unlike some other states where there's a little more leeway, which I was trying to base our system off of. So it really just shut down the sour program right there. Down the road, I would love to build another building on our property because we have plenty of room behind the main production, so we can use a lot of the same utilities, but have that perfect separation so we don't risk infecting our brewery. But for now, I think the closest we're going to be getting is we're still working with Brettanomyces. I'm comfortable using that in a brewery because it's still a yeast that you can kill as long as your procedures are fine. And kettle sours. So working on a kettle soured 100% Brett beer right now. That it'll be a few months before that one's ready, but excited to get that out there and see what people think.
Use lots of fruit. I love a good like Berliner Weiss with a ton of fruit, or just any of the kettle sours are coming out today.
So you do have a lot of room to expand. Part of that is because of your location here in Sheboygan. You don't have a lot of other breweries, clamoring for room. You definitely have a lot of room to expand. What was the thought process about doing your brewery here in Sheboygan?
Well, the first one we kind of fell into, with the old brew pub going out, and my wife was working in town. We'd been in Sheboygan for 6 or 8 years at that point and just enjoyed it. So we stayed. And when it came time to our expansion, we really took a look and said, what made the most sense? Milwaukee, there's still, the guys like Third Space and Good City weren't there yet. So it was still just kind of the guys who've been around for a while. And we contemplated there and some other markets. But, Sheboygan was our home. People here supported us so well. We loved it. And this facility became available. This was a former Coca-Cola packaging operation. So where we had about 10,000 square feet for the tap room, this used to just be where the trucks would get loaded at night. So it's just a big open space for us to play with. And then the 30,000 square foot brewery, the floors were already sloped and drained. It was the tallest real estate in Sheboygan County, so it allowed us to get fermenters in. We have 2 loading docks, huge space for a cooler, major garage door. So when we keep adding tanks now, it's just a matter of bringing them in and tilting them up. Nothing like our old building where we were taking out the 3rd floor in the roof and bringing in a 20-ton crane just to lift it in. It just made a lot of sense from the facility to keep growing and let us stay in town.
It's actually quite a beautiful facility. I really love the big family-style picnic tables that you have here. It gives it kind of like a rustic indoor feel.
Yeah, we really wanted to be... So Sheboygan used to have this great armory where people would come and all of our events were held there. You had basketball games, you had concerts. Bob Hope actually came to Sheboygan at one point and played there, performed. But that closed, and there really wasn't a community rec center, so to say. So that's what we want it to become. So we have community seating, no TVs in the main area. So the idea is you're going to come here, hang out, have a conversation with friends, and just it's a place where you can be comfortable.
And we would be remiss not to mention the giant chalkboard, which I also think speaks to the community of Sheboygan. Mm-hmm. So what is Buy a Beer for Your Bud?
Buy a Beer for Your Bud is something we stole from a few other breweries that we saw, that you can drop $5 to buy a beer for a friend. We'll put their name on the board, your name. When they come in next time, they can claim it. And one thing I really love is we recently added a Good Karma section where it's for professions. So whether it be an off-duty police officer, paramedic, Coast Guard, we have vets on there, nurses. People will just throw $5 to different trades. Ideally, when any of our service folk come in, they shouldn't be paying for a beer because we're doing it for them. And it's really cool to see that those lists, they never drop to zero. People are always supporting, and I love it. It's just something you get in this kind of small town feel that, Sheboygan's not that small, but it's just good people.
So what other events do you hold?
Most Friday nights we have live music here. We're currently doing bocce ball leagues, and we'll be getting into bags leagues, that sort of thing. We try to do a lot of fun and oddball events. We did a popcorn and beer pairing that was unbelievably popular and crowded.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook. Yeah. How did that turn out?
It was great. We had to order more popcorn, exceed expectations. So you see our flight boards. They were filled up. One was filled up with beer. The other one was filled up with popcorn for the same sample classes, and people just enjoyed it. They could do it at their own pace. And we did a last-minute Valentine making table station for people who forgot it was Valentine's Day. So we just had a bunch of construction paper and fancy scissors to cut out and crayons, and we try to pretend we're kids. Besides that, we do a lot of events with the community. We help Sheboygan host their Onion Fest, which our sister city in Germany has an Onion Fest where every food has to have onions in it. So we sponsor that on this side, and I've never had a better onion and peanut butter and jelly sandwich in my life. Things like that. But yeah, this tap room, it's fun because in the wintertime, we're slow. And we, like a lot of breweries, we just don't believe in layoffs. So it means we need to do something with our time. So thankfully, our guys are really talented, and this tap room is one that we built ourselves. Built all the tables, poured the concrete bar, put up the walls, and every winter we just keep adding to it. So last year we added a little game room. These flight boards, where we have our 3-ounce samplers in a piece of barrel wood that has holes cut into it. And one of my guys came in one morning saying, "Hey, check out what I made at home. This is really cool, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know what you're doing for the next 3 weeks, don't you?" So that's how we created our flight boards. And yeah, it's kind of fun. This is a tap room that we got to build.
So we've talked about the return of the Wolf coming in June 2018. What are some other future plans that we can look forward to?
I think the timing works out well. We'll be debuting some 16-ounce cans, which will be the hazy style. We're doing a Imperial IPA with Idaho 7 hops. We're doing a hazy pale ale with Galaxy and Amarillo, and then we're doing an IPA with Citra and blood oranges. So those will be, we're going to try to rotate those every couple months, make sure they stay fresh. We're doing a program with Bars of Wisconsin where they will have their keg within 3 days of packaging so that you're going to have the freshest hazy style you can possibly get. That's kind of a big focus for us this year, the logistics of distribution. Besides that, we're going to be doing so many different beers on our pilot system, trying and playing around with a lot of new ingredients and just kind of seeing what we can come up with. Probably getting some dark beers. I've yet to really dabble much with the Russian Imperial Stout, so I'm starting to get the itch to do that. We'll have some of those coming, and then really focusing on our 4-packs. Veneration will be out again in December. Roll Out the Barrel will be out in October, so we have a few things. Yeah.
Any other release parties?
We'll be doing a release party for the Wolf, where we'll have a couple variants on tap with that as well. That is about it. Most of now that we're into the 4-packs where we're selling them as well as our customers, we really kind of shy away from having too many release parties because we want people to go out to the folks that support us to buy them, not necessarily just come here. So you won't see too much fanfare on those days, but you can always expect a new tap. We're doing First Firkin Fridays, which is a competition amongst all the brewers. First Friday of the month, someone puts out a Firkin, and we see who has the record for how long it's going to take to kill it. John last month crushed it. Firkin was gone in 6 hours. So I don't know that that'll be beat for a while, but it was delicious. So it's a fresh coast with orange and apricot. Pineapple and apricot. That's right. It was pretty divine.
So now that we heard your plans going forward into the rest of the year and into early 2019, what do you see as some of the challenges for yourself and your company and craft brewing going forward?
As far as craft brewing going forward, I think we're all still trying to figure out where this crazy industry is going. I think this year was kind of telling. With the number of breweries that opened, the amount of capacity that's opened up in the country, it's one of the first years where that wasn't greater than the volume increase on what people were consuming. So I think we're going to start seeing some pullbacks on what people are trying to offer, and I don't want to say the bubble will be bursting because I think we have a while before we start seeing that downtrend. But people are really focusing their efforts, and we have guys like Green Flash and stories like that are telling and kind of make you want to pause and think about how you do want to keep growing to make sure you don't pull a Krispy Kreme. That's my favorite case study of growing so quickly and then you just can't support it and everything fails. So we're going to take our time. We have some great markets that we're in. We're going to kind of get deeper into those markets. We have so many things we want to do, and just making sure that we have the time to execute them well. We never want to put out a beer that we're not 100% proud of, and that usually means that we are doing so many test batches of that beer that
well, if you need help with that,
it takes a while. Thank you. Perfect.
Quality control.
It takes a while. So a lot. I think it's our timetables are at this point often realize that they're written in pencil. A beer's ready when it's ready, a barrel's ready when it's ready. Things may get pushed back a little bit, but it just means that we want to make sure that it gets there right the first time.
Let's get into some of the nerd portion of the show, get into some of the brewing technicals. 14 ingredients that went into the Wolf. I'd love to hear more details about those.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm willing to do that.
And not giving away state secrets.
Exactly. No, there's part of
if you want to give mash temps and proportions and specific yeast variety.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, that's, I never have a problem talking about ingredients because it doesn't tell the whole story. When it comes to percentages, we usually won't because that's half the fun of brewing. Trying to figure out what needs to go together to make it that beer that you love. A lot of it, one, we start with all Breeze malt. We use Breeze malt for everything we do. Having them be 40 minutes from the brewery, it's a really easy decision considering they're the best specialty maltster in the country. So we use a couple different base malts from Breeze. We use some Pilsner malt. We use wheat, oat, a couple different types of wheat. Midnight wheat, which to me is kind of I'll call it secret ingredient when it comes to any good stout. I like my dark roast, I like my chocolate malts, things like that. But midnight wheat, using it in the right percentage, can change a beer from being roasty to chocolatey to coffee tones. And it has no bitterness to it because wheat has no husk on it, so you can roast it as dark as you want without those harsh undertones. So it really lets you hone in on that dark flavor that you want. And then we use some Belgian candy sugars in there as well, just to, when you get into I think last year it clocked in at about 13%, you need something so that you're not just like eating porridge when you come drinking the beer, and they also provide then their own kind of unfermentables, the caramel notes, the figgy characteristics. So yes, kitchen sink of malt bills.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and you also can only fit so much grain in a mash tun, right? I mean,
yeah,
there's limitations.
And that's one of the nice things. When we were able to put in a new mash tun, we went with a new system from Sprinkman. They're, I think, one of the best brewhouse manufacturers in the country, and they're based outside of Milwaukee. But with our mash tun, we knew that we were doing a lot of high BV beers, so it's an oversized mash tun. So we can we're usually, if you have an older system, if you're going to brew a 10% beer, you're only making a 2/3 volume of what your normal brew is, but we can do a full 30 barrels of the Wolf, hit our gravities with our mash tun that we have. So it's really nice not to have to have either like our old system we'd have a triple or a quadruple brew day. We just have a double, and we can knock out 60 barrels of the Wolf, go home at a normal time. Oh. It's lovely.
So before we get to the last beer of taking over our taps, I'm just going to throw it back to the first one real quick. We had mentioned during the break that water slides used to be really cool water slides. You kind of abbreviated the name. Is there any other of your beers that you've done that with?
Rebel Kent used to be Rebel Kent the first. Took out the brevity side of it.
My name is Joe.
Well, yeah. Hello, my name is Joe. That unfortunately went away for right now. So when that comes back, we'll see what that becomes. Maybe just Hello, Joe. Otherwise, no. The rest stayed the same. The rest were kind of within the parameters of being concise enough.
Let's take it all the way back to that Tap Takeover. We left one spot on the Tap Takeover.
That's right.
And we have to get the beer nerds out of bed. So is there a special release or something that you would throw on if we were taking over those taps?
If I got to get really whatever I wanted, it's my new white.
Which is your favorite child?
Yeah, well, it's probably my new white whale, the one I'm kind of working on that I just haven't hit yet. So, like I mentioned, I'm working on a Russian Imperial Stout, but that's not the full story. It's a Russian Imperial Stout with cinnamon, molasses, cocoa nibs, and ancho chilies. Just working on, I realized like a regular Russian Imperial Stout base just wasn't enough to hit that. I have to make it almost more Russian-y harsh than traditional, so kind of rejiggering that base beer to handle all of those flavors. So yes, I will have that nailed. This will be out at the end of this year here.
Nice.
But yes, hopefully we'll be ready for your Tap Takeover.
Sounds like some breaking news on the podcast today.
Something to look forward to coming from Three Sheeps.
So is one of the iterations of that what you guys tested at Brass Tap earlier this week without the ancho?
So that was the first of our Barrel Society beers.
Okay.
So we started a Barrel Society program this year. Oh, good transition.
It's the art of knowing without knowing.
Right?
That was in our beer news last week.
So with all of our new space, we've been able to kind of sock away a lot of random varieties of barrels. So we'll fill 2 barrels of 2 tequila, 2 Scotch barrels, 2 of anything. We decided we wanted to start a Barrel Society program where it would allow us to kind of work with 200 people we limited to, where they had faith in us to help kind of prepay for the program. It really let us not worry about any kind of costs and just make great beer. So the first release was an Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels with cinnamon and maple syrup. And we had the first release here at the tap room last weekend. We brought some to the Brass Tap Beer Fest last weekend at Discount Liquor.
Crafts and Drafts.
Crafts and Drafts, thank you very much. And people enjoyed it. So that was a fun first one. And they're going to be all aboard. This first one was bourbon barrel. Like I said, we'll have some tequila. We'll have some red wine. a few other things to be announced. But it's going to be a fun program that we hope to expand upon because it's another different format. They're 16.9 ounce bottles, just a kind of a whole different avenue we get to go down and pursue as brewers and to be creative with.
It's been a really fun time taking the podcast on the road this week and coming up to Sheboygan and talking with you, Grant. And thank you again for having us. We've had a blast.
Same here. Yeah, thank you for coming on. I can always talk beer. It's far too easy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We could geek out anytime you want. But it looks like we are out of beer for the moment, so we're going to have to put a cap on this one. For me, for Alex.
Jesus?
I'm Jim.
I'm Grant.
And Andy.
This is going to do it for us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks again to Grant for hosting us that wonderful evening, allowing us to partake in some of your beers. Up next is Paid Time Off. So we're going to start off with the 2016 version. Again, another Imperial Black Wheat, but this time with cocoa nibs and coconut and walnuts. Then we'll go to the 2018, again revised to the Imperial Stout. So let's start off with the 2016. Alex, what do you think?
I think we're dealing with the same sort of thing that we did with the barrel-aged Uber Joe from 2016. Some of the flavors have fallen off. So we're talking about, cocoa nibs and coconut and walnut, and they're there, but they're very, very slight. It's very, very subtle. A lot of those flavors had fallen off. But the base beer, the base wheat, is still hanging on, and I think it's pretty good. I don't know. Jesus, what do you think?
No, I like it. It's pretty. You get the sweetness, but kind of everything has fallen off. It goes back to this whole experiment thing. This one was just aged too long. So it was surprising because I thought I had high hopes for this one, but I guess, Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a little bit of coconut. Also, the big difference here is the original 2016 was not barrel aged at all. So there's no barrel aging where today it is. And again, I guess this is where we're doing a service for the people where drink your adjunct stouts right away. So, Andy, what do we have next?
On that note, I'm just going to throw it back to the 2018 version of Paid Time Off. Move it forward a couple years, bourbon barrel aged, and it's tasting really fantastic. I mean, granted, like we said before, this is only 2 to 4 weeks out. It's really, really good.
This beer is actually a closer correlation between the current one and the later one than the Uber Joe was to its previous version.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think the barrel-aged Uber Joe this year is so much better. It's light years better than the 2016.
And we're getting into it's just a totally different beer.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas the barrel-aged Time Off from 2018, it's much closer to the 2016. Not to say... I still think it's really good. The 2018, it's better than the 2016.
It's a showcase for drinking now, like we were just saying. Even with if you're using natural flavors, it's going to fall off.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious about Jim. What do you think about the whole barrel aging of this one? Because again, it's another beer that is barrel aged, but I just don't see the barrel being the star of this one.
Yeah, again, it is very subtle, and kudos to Grant on re-imaging all his beers that were the anniversary beers. They're kind of the star of what you do. It's a showcase. You work a whole year. Now your time to show off. And he redid all these beers. And now to barrel age it again, though, to your point, Jesus, it is very subtle. He's not allowing the barrel to overpower all the adjuncts that he puts in.
Yeah, and Jim, I think to your point, the rebranding that Three Sheeps has done has been very successful. I think we looked at the 2016 bottles, and these are sexy bottles. We were talking about the jet black with the gold trim, but the new one's also jet black with that turquoise. I don't know. It's a pretty sexy bottle.
You gotta stay with the times. I mean, the new envisioning of their marketing scheme on their bottles, on their labels, is sleek. So it's a lot more sleek. It's not blocky. It's just slender in there. Pretty bottle.
Yeah, and I love what Grant said about the whole rebranding process. I mean, they are a young brewery. They just had their 6th anniversary, and they just wanted to be more modern, get the whole, get a facelift, do a new look, and the bottles do that. Their whole recipes have been just altered a bit. They're doing good stuff down in Sheboygan.
Absolutely. It's been fun to listen to Grant on this entire interview, how he talks about his beer, the reverence that he has for the ingredients and the location and everything else. It's just been a really fun experience to head up to Sheboygan for Three Sheeps. And I think that's going to do it for us for now, guys. That is all that I have in my glass. So it looked like we are out of beer. So for me, for Alex.
I'm Jim.
Andy here.
And Jesus.
This has been a solid non-fail production.
No more beer There's no